cozy. That's probably the most overused word on the internet right now. And in my life, because who doesn't want everything to be cozy? I'm finally making a pattern recommendation video. I've been meaning to do this for a while and I just haven't sat down to do it. Although there are so many patterns I'm in love with, I really need to break it out into like specifics. And the reason I'm starting with color work is because it is my favorite category of the knit and crochet world. I think it's the best way to create a really strong, immediate visual impact with a piece. For the purposes of this video, I'm personally defining colorwork knitting as any knitting that involves more than one color. There are multiple different types of color work, and some of the more popular ones tend to be using stripes, doing duplicate stitch, which is when you sort of embroider over a finished piece of knitting to make it look like the colors have been knit into it. There's also embroidery, which is not very common to be included in knitting patterns, but it can sometimes be included. My personal favorite is stranded color work, and there are different specific varieties of stranded color work like Fair Isle, Selbu, and there's a couple other ones. I have links in the description to learn more about the different types of color work. So if you ever want to learn more details about these different types, go there and check it out. There's also mosaic knitting, which is sometimes called slip stitch knitting, where you are knitting one color at a time essentially and slipping the stitches that you're not going to be knitting in that color. There's intarsia, where you are twisting the yarn when you switch colors, and it's usually done for like larger pieces of color, like if you have a big section of color. And then there are also specialty types of color work where executing the technique isn't inherently color work, but often color work is paired with these techniques. So that would be entrelac, I think is one of them. I've never heard that word said out loud, but you can do color work versions of that, but it doesn't have to be color work. Same with double knitting brioche, like 2-color brioche. Each of the types I've mentioned have their own subsections, especially because of the cultural implications. So I know as far as stranded color work goes, certain areas of Scotland traditionally have different methods than different areas of Norway. And the history behind it, all very interesting. Again, I have links in the description if you want to learn more about that. Now for the patterns, I have 12 different patterns that I personally would love to knit. These are ones that I have not knit before, and I am personally like really looking forward to doing. As I go through each of these sections, I'm going to include some of the pattern details as text on the screen. So that'll include the pattern name, the designer, the chest circumference availability range so that you can tell if it's size inclusive or not, the recommended yarn weight for the pattern, and lastly, the type of color work that it is. So is it a stranded color work? Is it intarsia? And I'm just including that in case I forget to verbally state all of those details. So let's get into it. The first pattern I want to make is the Neigh sweater by Caitlin Hunter. She is the designer that designed the halibut sweater, which is the one that I'm currently wearing. I love the way this pattern was written. I love the way it fits. I completely trust this designer, and I just love the look of it. Like, those horses are so fun. And there's something kind of like medieval about it to me. Like, it's definitely not a middle school horse girl sweater, although that could be cool too. If I were to knit this myself, I would actually use the same colors shown in the sample. I'm also looking at the sample right now, and I kind of like how the cuffs and the bottom ribbing are a different color than the rest of it, but I'm not sure if I would do that myself or if I would just do that as red, because I would love to do the same like burgundy red and like almost a beige. Like, that's not white, it's a pretty darker beige. This pattern's so cute. I think the sleeve detail is also really nice. I haven't done color work on sleeves before. I also personally would just feel really cool like rolling up to work in this sweater. Next up, we have the Saskie sweater by the Petite Knitter. It's not Petite Knit, it's the Petite Knitter. And okay, just a quick note here, the sample photos are so good. I don't know where these pictures were taken, but it looks phenomenal. Great photo shoot, they did a good job. This sweater is just adorable. It's adorable, especially in the colors that they do. I don't currently own anything brown. I feel like that's just what I'm gonna say for all of these, is like I would do the exact color that they did. I think this one, there's a lot more flexibility to it. So if I wanted it to be more springy, I would go for like a dusty blue color. And it also looks like it's just that color combo, I think, makes it work year round, except for the summer. I probably would not wear a wool sweater in the summer. I also like that the bunnies are pretty well defined. Sometimes on colorwork sweaters, when they have smaller details like that, you kind of lose visually what they're going for. Beautiful sweater. I also really love the detail. The top row on the neckline there, would you call it the base color? It's the brown as opposed to the rest of the collar, which is white. And then I love that on the bottom, it's white against the brown. Like, that's just a cute little detail. The Furtuna's Wheel Pullover by Elspeth Vance. This is stranded color work, and oh my gosh, is it a showstopper. It's so cool, oh my gosh. I do love the color combo of the black and white that they did. I think it's really classic to like those mind trippy images. I personally think it would be cool to do like a red and a off-white. Next up is actually a collection of 3 different sweaters, but it's sold as a collection, so I just wanted to share the whole collection together. It's the Partner Pullover Pack by Lydia Morrow. This one I'll particularly point out, I think is the most size inclusive item that's on this list. I personally really like the use of different colors in some of these, and I think it would be a great way to use up scrap yarn, or if you do like an advent calendar with yarn, or just have a collection of mini skeins, this would be a really fun way to use up mini skeins. It's giving me ideas. I currently have mini skeins and I kind of want to try using them with one of these patterns. I just like that they're simple, they feel pretty timeless to me, and that you can go really fun and bold with the color palette and it'll make sense and it won't feel like it's too much, or you can go really muted with it and just have it be kind of a staple piece. The Alone Together sweater. This is the only like scrappy one that's currently on the list that's designed to be scrappy. This one isn't even like a formal written pattern. It's written on Larke Bagger's Instagram in her stories. So you have to go into her Instagram, look at her stories, and it gives instructions. She put together this design during 2020 March, so like prime beginning of lockdown for a lot of people. Obviously the name Alone Together, the inspiration was lockdown. The intention is to knit this in multiple different colors, or at the very least multiple different types of yarn. And I would love to do this. I actually have plans to do this and I have yarn to do this with. I have a bunch of like loose different colors of yarn. And I personally want to do this with a totally neutral brown facing color palette where I have colors ranging between cream and dark brown, and working those into the pattern. I would also love to do, it's Larke Bagger, I would love to do any of her other scrappy patterns. She has so many awesome ones. I love her book. But the detail that I like about this pattern is that it has a low scoop neck, and normally I'm not super into that, but I love the way that it's shaped in this pattern because it's like simple but interesting at the same time. And then anytime I have yarn that feels like a little too itchy or rustic for my neck, because that's for most people their most sensitive area, this would be a great opportunity to use that yarn because then it's not touching those really sensitive areas. The Funky Gustav sweater by Joanna Garish. Isn't this one just like cool? It's interesting. It's the only one that includes cables that is on this list, and that's not something that I've frequently seen before. I think a lot of people are scared to combine cables with color work because it can just seem like too much, but the way that it's done here is done really, really well. I personally love the color palette that the designer used in the sample, and that would be really cool. However, I don't feel very confident when I have like a bright yellow right next to my face. It's not one of my colors. So if I were to do this, I think what I would do is white and beige stripes, like a darker beige, and then for the vertical lines, picking a brighter color. So like a cherry red and then a note for this, I haven't done this pattern before, but from what I can tell, I think that the vertical stripes, the color is actually added after the garment is finished. So for most of it, you're doing the stripes while doing that cable motif. And then when it's all done, going and adding that contrasting color over with a crochet hook. I think that's a really smart technique to approach something like this. It's really unique and definitely eye-catching in my opinion. The first colorwork sweater that I ever fell in love with was the Dirty Carmel sweater by Veronica Lindberg. It's currently in her book Knit This, but I think you can also buy it separately. I think she released all of her patterns separate, so you can just buy the individual ones. Although I do love her book, it's very cute. I would 100% use the colors that she used in the pattern. I would not deviate at all. The colors she picked, she has such an eye for color in my opinion, and this is no exception. They look phenomenal. And I love that the color work is carried into the body of the sweater as well, which is not very common. I feel like a lot of stranded colorwork sweaters, they stop, especially when doing a circular yoke. They stop once you split for the sleeves, but hers, the colorwork motif continues. And I think I also really like this because it has that feel of like traditional Fair Isle, but it's a modern take on it. But she also, I think she walks that line really well in all of her designs. Like they feel very modern, but timeless simultaneously. When I went to edit, I noticed that there was a part of the video where the audio was messed up, so I'm just gonna rehash some of the stuff here. A stranded colorwork pattern that I am obsessed with and I really wanna make this winter is the Kosekofte sweater by Scandier Knits. It's just freaking beautiful. Looking at this, all I can think is like timeless Scandinavian. It's really beautifully done. I would love to get my hands on some Norwegian wool, make like an oversized version that I can wear outside like in the dead of winter. I personally really like the idea of doing like the dark, rich navy blue with a white contrast color. Also looking at the colorwork design, I think this could also be translated into spring by doing like a lighter color. I personally don't feel very confident when I'm wearing yellow, but I think it would be really cute to do this in like a yellow with white contrasting color. That's the video. The Wave Sweater by Thea Vesterby. I think it's just called The Wave, but I'm adding sweater at the end of it so that I know what I'm talking about. This is stunning. It's combining colorwork and lace knitting. I think the colorwork is just done in stripes, and combining that with the lace knitting is awesome. Again, this could so easily look like too much, combining colorwork and lace, but it just doesn't look like too much, even with these really bright, interesting colors that were chosen. If I were to do this, I think what I would do is pick 2 different tones of color maybe. So doing like a really light blue and a darker blue, or picking 2 colors next to each other on the color spectrum and kind of mimicking the intent of the sample. So the sample is pink and orange, very close to each other on the color spectrum. So doing blue and green or blue and purple. This pattern is just beautiful. I can't stop looking at it. I think they just really, I want to reiterate, they did such a good job of adding colorwork to lace and not having it look like too much, at least in my opinion. I would love to make this. I think I would feel really proud of myself if I were able to finish and execute this. This is the Kainuu Sweater. The sweater is named after the region in Finland where the designer grew up. And looking at the sweater itself, like, dang, I think I want to go to this place. It looks so magical with like the fruity, very springy design. If I were to make this, I probably would want to do it in like a cotton merino or something that could be worn into summer quite a bit, because the look of this could definitely be pulled off with some like light linen shorts. I would totally do the same colors used in the pattern. I wouldn't deviate at all. Yeah, okay, the neckline is an I-cord, then I would totally do it. I'm not a huge fan of like raw edge necklines. Some I do like, but I can get behind an I-cord. Something about an I-cord just like being finished to me, like they can look very similar, but I don't know, I just like the structure of an I-cord. Again, I think I would totally try to knit this in a summery yarn, just because also with the short ribbing on the bottom and on the sleeves, it just gives full like late spring vibes to me. I also like, from looking at this, it looks to me like you're never knitting with more than 2 colors at a time. So for each row, you just have your main color and you're switching out what contrasting color you're using. That's nice because yarn management with like more than 3 colors is kind of a lot. I've done a pair of socks where I had like multiple colors going on at the same time and it was kind of a lot. Definitely doable, but it can be more complicated. So this is definitely on the easier side, but it like has so many colors going on that it feels like way more advanced. The Tessellated Pullover by Andrea Mowry. Also a very size-inclusive sweater pattern. She, I think, also does a pretty good job of making size-inclusive sweaters. Also, like when I look at the colors that she used, I love that there's a color-changing fiber going on in there. So there's elements of like yellow and orange and green and blue. And then the 2 contrasting colors of like that deep, really rich turquoise color combined with, I think that's like a lighter pink that's also pretty saturated. Like it's a pretty color, it's not a dusty pink. I just love that she was able to combine so many rich, saturated colors and have it look real good. So I would absolutely use the colors that she used. Why wouldn't you? Some people just have like such an amazing eye for color. And I think that helps with certain colorwork patterns when the designer has samples that are done that like truly fit your style. They're way more attractive. So I think it's a lot harder for other people to like wrap their mind around certain colorwork patterns, because there are some things that I look at and like the colors together that were picked are not my style at all. But if I saw a picture and they were in my style, I would be like obsessed with it. When I look through the finished projects, a lot of people went more simple with their colors. and didn't have any color changing yarn going on in there, I love the way that the color changing yarn looks, and I like it enough where I would for sure do that. When you take it out, it still looks good, but some people have copied the exact yarn that she used, and all of those samples I like the best personally. So maybe I wouldn't even use the same color changing yarn that she used, but I would use a color changing yarn. This is mosaic knitting. It is something that Andrea Mowry does really well and has a lot of experience with. I personally have not done any mosaic knitting yet. I'm looking forward to it, and this would be the pattern that I would do to test it out. I wouldn't start with something small like an accessory. I just want to dive right into it. And the last one is just kind of a fun one to throw in here. It is a children's pattern by Knitting for Olive called the Bird Sweater. And I just loved it. I think I saw it on Instagram like a year and a half ago maybe. And I wanted to make it. So as soon as someone I know or am close to has kids, I am for sure making one of these sweaters. And I think the pattern is designed to have, I don't know what the birds are, maybe it's like a robin and a blue jay. I think it's designed for them, like one sweater could be a robin and one could be a blue jay. I would try to do it front and back so that you could have both motifs on the same sweater, and potentially even do it reversible so that you could just have whichever one you want in the front. I would probably not use Knitting for Olive Merino to make this. I think that's the recommended yarn. I would want to do something that's more easily machine washable, because if I know someone that has kids, I would feel more comfortable giving them something that is easy to wash, like still air dry, but I feel a little bit bad when I give someone a sweater that is like hand wash only. So I try to check with people in advance as well. But if it's their first kid, I would personally want to do a machine washable one, just because they won't know until they're thrust into the midst of parenthood if they're gonna have the energy to hand wash something. So I would just default to like something that's machine washable. Still, this sweater's freaking adorable. This one is duplicate stitch, and the execution is just so cute. I think if you know anybody that's a bird watcher in your life, you could totally use the same color chart and scale it up to a larger gauge sweater, or even, that's the great thing about duplicate stitch too, it's so versatile. You can buy a sweater at Goodwill and then like duplicate stitch on any design that you want. So if you've wanted something with a really cool color work motif on it, but you don't want to go through the effort of making an entire sweater just to duplicate stitch over it, buy a sweater and then do the duplicate stitch. Totally another option. Oh, my cat is sleeping on the router right now. Mary, you can't be sleeping on the router. Those are the colorwork sweaters. If there are any that you absolutely love that were not included on this list, please share them. And then if there are any on this list that you would totally like to make, also share that and like write down what color combos you would choose. I would just love ideas from people, especially because I personally want to make all of these sweaters. Who knows if I'll be able to, but I want to. If there are any categories in future videos that you would like me to cover, like crochet summer tank tops or knit dresses or like lace knit hats, like whatever. Let me know what you'd be most interested in and I can prioritize those categories. I probably already released the video, but I made this blanket and I am actually in love with it now. I had some feelings about it as I was making it, but I have been sleeping with this a lot. And Mary has also, she's been obsessed with it. She's just been, wherever it is, whatever room it's in, she's sleeping on it. I think she likes how crinkly it is. Me too, girl, me too. Is that it? Did we cover it all? I think we did. I think I'm gonna change out of this sweater only because it is 85 degrees outside right now. I was trying to think if I could pick one of these patterns to start right away, what one would I do? I'm having a really hard time picking. I want to do them all.